Welcome back to the Breakout Barn. We are back for another episode of Willy. If you are new to Willy, Willy is our beloved 1996 Ford Ranger PreRunner in the making project. I am flying through this thing. I mean, the actual timeline for this is like a couple of days relative to the dots and stuff. And I need to get this bad boy out of here on the road, be able to park it outside so that I can get the Datsun back in the lift, and we can return to that content. Currently being cucked, we'll call it cucked, by the USPS, who is taking my parts from California and making sure that they stop in every state along the way. The stuff that I'm waiting on for the suspension is currently in its 8th state right now. So hoping that gets here ahead of schedule. It's apparently a 14-day USPS ground package from the City of Industry, California, which is like, you know, where 90% of auto parts come from apparently. In the meantime, I'm going to do a couple of things that I wanted to do just ahead of schedule because I wanted to make sure that I got it up and running and everything fine, and I can't actually do that until the shit shows up. So DeJoy, if you're watching this, suck it. Thanks for ruining our postal service. I did get the opportunity to clean it up. Drove down to the lower driveway, pressure washed it, scrubbed it, found a couple of icky spots in the paint where you could tell that this thing was definitely repainted. I also found some old registration information. Looks like this was originally sold to a painting company, which explains all the white paint splotches in the bed and the horrible seat covers that were on it. Like so, because when you're a painter and you have a 1996 Ford Ranger, do you care? I probably wouldn't. The interior is a different story. Not really. Paint splotches all over the seats. I did manage to get the seat covers off. I vacuumed the ever-living heck out of the seats as much as I could. Under the carpets, not a great situation, but the carpet doesn't really stink that much anymore. I may have to shampoo it. I'm waiting to shampoo the carpets until I get the seats out. I just haven't gotten to the seats yet. I will say this, behind the seats, the rear space, if you'll call it that, cleaned up super well, actually. I mean, it was a filthy disaster mess in here, and it vacuumed up really nice, and the jump seats are mint. I don't know that there's ever been a fart laid into them. I mean, it's ridiculous how new these are. Also, the cargo cover is there and works, so got a little bit of bouginess to the Ranger. So anyways, on to what we're doing today. If you're familiar with PreRunners at all, they all carry their obnoxiously sized spare tires somewhere in the bed on some ridiculously inconvenient spare tire carrier. Normally it's like, hey, we have this entire bed. Let's just drill holes in the middle of it and put the spare tire there. And I get it, it's for like weight and balance and, you know, keeping stuff between the axles and the center of gravity and blah, blah, blah. But it's also not convenient for having a truck that you actually want to use the bed for. So I got to thinking, where can we mount the spare tire, right? I can make kind of like a bracket thing, and a 31 actually fits in here, but if I ever wanted to put a 33 on here, it wouldn't fit. I would have to elevate it too much, and it would be out here. And then I thought, well, I wanted to put a roof basket on it, right? And I could do the roof basket thing, and that's all well and good. And then I'm looking at the roof, and I'm like, do I really want to drill holes in the roof? Because they don't make roof racks for Ford Rangers. And then I'm looking at all the stuff, and as I'm cleaning the truck, I'm gonna put the tailgate up, and in doing so, made a fairly critical discovery. The tailgate, I actually pulled the only working latch out because it only had one latch, but the entire thing is like inches away from just falling apart completely. This side doesn't latch, this hinge works on this side. This hinge on this side is busted. This latch works. This latch doesn't work. I pulled it apart to investigate, and somebody did this. I'm guessing that this latch was hanging up at some point, and instead of just like actually taking this out and cleaning the spring and like lubing it. They decided to just tie it back with electrical wire, phone cord maybe, and a ton of electrical tape, and then this wire tie that was across this thing. And so had a genius moment, decided since the tailgate sucks and we're gonna do some tube frame bumpers, why don't we just make our own spare tire carrier swinging tailgate for this thing? Okay, that all sounds well and good. Why don't you just buy something? Because I looked into spare tire replacement carrier, whatever the hell I'm talking about, and the cheapest one you can get is like $750 for like, I don't know, 12 feet of tubing, some welds, and some hinges. And I was like, are you kidding me? I probably have enough leftover tubing to build that thing without spending a penny on it. I spent $27 because I wanted to use new hardware, and I wanted to make sure that whatever I was putting on here was beefy. So I've got a rough design. We're gonna run through that rough design and build it. I've got leftover tube stock from previous projects. That is 1 5/8, 12 gauge. No, that's 1 5/8, 14 gauge. This is 2 1/4 12 gauge, I believe. I'll have to remeasure it. Either way, it's strong stuff. This is leftover stuff from building bumpers and supports and that kind of stuff in the past. So, I mean, the tensile strength of 12 gauge, 2-inch tube, 2 1/4 tube is something like, I don't know, 80,000 PSI, KSI, 80 KSI if you're a structural engineer. I mean, it's way overkill for what we need it for. So I'm probably going to use that 1 5/8 tube and whip up something real nice here. Again, keeping it simple. Our goal is to be able to have a place to mount this guy, because the underbed carrier is not going to support a 31-inch tire or a 33. And I'm thinking that I'm going to go 33s once I lift it, because the more that I look at it, the more that the 31s are just not enough for me, because that's how I am. Swinging functionality and latching functionality without taking away from bed access. So first steps first, we're going to remove the tailgate. I'm going to take some measurements. I'm going to build out the hinge side from there, rough height and everything like that. And then I'm going to build out the rest of it. I'm probably only going to have it latch on the top, because that's going to be fine. And we're going to pull off the back bumper in the process, just to make sure that we clear everything. And we're going to go from there. It's party time. Let's cut some stuff.
Okay, so I'm going to try something a little bit new here. We're going to do a little bit of voiceover for this, so I can walk you through what I'm doing instead of subtitles. I figure this might be a little bit easier, particularly with the audio issues that I've run into recently with YouTube. So right here you can see that I'm literally just taking off the tailgate. I'm actually really fighting with the fasteners. It was quite a struggle to get them out. I had to drill the center of one. One actually heated up from drilling, and I had to grab the angle grinder to cut it off. But to do this, it's just a couple of Torx bits, top and bottom, and the tops are actually threaded into the body itself. The bottoms have a kind of a backing plate that they mount to. Removing the bumper is a couple 18mm head bolts on either side, or 3/4, and then I'm pulling off the spare tire carrier here, which is pretty simple. It was 2 bolts on the passenger side, 1 bolt on the driver's side, and then the drop mechanism in the back. I'm now measuring and kind of formulating in my head what we're going to be doing moving forwards here. I decided to make the initial post on the left-hand side a 45-degree cut on the top to give us a nice miter joint for the crossbar. So the initial stanchion on the left-hand side, I decided to make 24 inches, and that fit pretty much really well from the top of the side of the bed down to the bottom of the bumper. I made the decision here to basically replace the entire tailgate and bumper assembly in one. Here I'm just cutting some standoffs because I needed a way to space off the first upright from the hinges themselves so that they could clear the hinges. I ended up doing this twice because I didn't like the original design that I came up with. Just clean off some gasket, clean up some paint. I had already made the decision to weld to the body at this point, which we'll get to in a minute. So this particular tube that I'm using had a powder coat finish on it. It was a structural piece that came with a decorative coating on it already for an outdoor project that I used. So every weld that I had to make here, I had to remove that actual paint finish. It was some sort of epoxy paint. It was it was really easy to remove. I just used a little bit of a Scotch-Brite pad. You can see here that I've cut the angle iron and I'm tacking it in place right now on all the brackets that I made for the hinges. Doing a little bit of finish welding on one, cleaning up on the grinder, coming back for a second pass. I've come to find out that even with something like 10 gauge angle iron, you have to be careful as to how much heat you put into it, particularly when welding, because it definitely will warp on you if you're not careful. For the hinges on the gate side itself, I actually used a 3/8 black pipe with a 1/2-inch fastener. And a 1/2-inch fastener actually fits very snugly inside a 3/8 black pipe, just based on on how they actually measure the size of the pipe. So I'm just going through, test fitting everything again, making sure that I'm square. I want this thing to open and close smoothly, and whenever you introduce two hinges, you run the risk of things binding. So you saw me with the file there, just opening up that top hole a little bit, just to make it swing a little bit easier. I don't want to have too much tension on this when I'm opening and closing it. So tacking it in place, first upright here. From here, I'm going to build out the remainder of the swing arm assembly. Battery died. I know that's a shock, especially on this channel. So quick battery swap. Looks like we're cleaning up some of the mating surfaces here. As I mentioned earlier in this, that it's super important to have clean spots to weld to. So I'm using some they're brown or a coarse grit Scotch-Brite pads on just a small length grinder to clean that up. That's where my bench grinder is, back there in that corner behind the nice drywall lift. So just cleaning up the edges here, putting a slight bevel on them so that when I set those welds in, they're a little bit more flush. I didn't go crazy on this, trying to make it look beautiful, right? I want it to be structurally sound, and that was my most important thing. If this was for a customer or something like that, I would absolutely have taken more time on it, but since it's for me, just gonna send it. So more of that same 10 gauge angle iron. Test fitting the latch position right now, or not necessarily test fitting, but eyeing up where the latch is going to sit. Making sure that I have the height right for the lower bar to come in and weld to. Making sure that there's enough overlap for me to get a seamless weld on at least two sides. So at this point, we've moved over to the mill. You can see here I'm milling out the center hole for the latch, starting with the small one just to make the cuts a little bit easier, hogging out less material, and then stepping up to a 1/2-inch bit for some smoother millings. Also punching holes through this thing. If you've never drilled a hole with a mill, it's a fantastic experience. There's no wobbling, it just slices right through. Now we're finding some fasteners for the latch mechanism itself. We've got it latched and clipped in place and tack it. Now I'm finished welding the top, making sure that everything was square to itself. This is the bottom bar that I measured and cut off camera while my battery was dead. While all three batteries were dead, actually, because that's just how things go around here. So at this point, I'm looking for the center point on the crossbar. I've marked that. I'm making the measurement for the down tube that's going to support the spare tire mount itself. I believe I made that 14 inches long, if I remember, 14 and a half, something like that. So now I'm showing you my actual coping jig, basically, for my mill. The side of the mill behind the quill feet actually has a nice angle indicator, so I can get some really precise cuts on this. These are just straight 90s that I'm doing here, perpendicular cuts. You matching the hole saw to the OD of the tube to get a nice snug fit around it. Right here, I'm measuring the back spacing off the wheel and marking where the holes need to be for the actual lug studs to come through. I'm actually back at the mill right now, hogging out those holes. And we're gonna drop it on. A little bit of tightening with some fasteners. And then we're gonna talk about it.
Okay, so fast forward one day, because that is approximately how long it takes for paint to dry. Didn't want to show you guys me painting it. Felt like that was kind of boring. And we have a mostly finished product. Excuse the disaster of tools and mess in the background. Still need to clean it up a little bit, but wanted to button this up real quick. So really simple, right? Really strong design. I actually incorporated the latch mechanism from the tailgate, the old tailgate. I welded on a D-ring to the pull just to give it a nice little handle. So works really well. It's really sturdy. I mean, whole truck moves. You saw me struggling there a little bit with some of those cuts. I had some complex angles here because I didn't math considerably well, so that ended up being like a 21-inch offset miter, or a 21-degree offset miter, and some weird 14-degree stuff in here. I opted to keep this as a single plate, or a single support, I should say, instead of adding a stanchion here, which I actually cut and notched and everything. But once I got this welded up, I mean, it's extremely sturdy. I designed this actual mount mechanism to use the tire as part of the bracing. So I didn't want to stabilize the entire wheel on this and have this thing just hang off here. So that the tire actually impacts the top and bottom bars. And it sits with maybe 3/8 of an inch of gap off the face of this plate. This plate is actually just a leftover 6x6 from one of the roll cages that I built a while ago, or a spare from a roll cage that I built a while ago. Traditional 1/2 inch by 20 actual Ford Ranger wheel studs, lug studs that I just welded in place. A little bit of an issue with these particular wheels because the face of them are so thin that I actually have to throw a washer back here to fully secure it on there. Design flaw, but this thing cost me $1.99 in D-ring, $4 in wheel studs, and I used some brand new grade 5 1/2 inch bolts and nylon lock nuts. So $8 plus some scrap and I don't know, whatever the wire was. So I'm gonna get the spare tire mounted on there. Oh, another thing, I'm using a 1/2 inch trailer hitch pin, a locking pin, because I wanted a way to secure the wheel to this, basically so that someone can come, just come up and take the lug nuts off and walk away with my spare. The downside to that, the reason that I didn't weld this in place, is that if I opt to go with a different wheel, I could weld this in place for this wheel, right? But if I opt to go with a different wheel that has a different actual throat on the hole, I wanted some sort of adjustability here. So what I'm gonna end up doing is probably using a nylon spacer to space this thing out, just to make sure that it's not flopping and banging around in here. But for right now, it works. Plan for license plate and for lights and everything is going to be in this corner. I am, once this thing is fully lifted, I'm going to see what this looks like and make some sort of plate, but I left space down here so that it doesn't interfere with it. As far as mounts go, I should probably talk about those. I basically just took some angle iron, some 2x2 10 gauge angle iron, and cut some triangular gussets to box it out, and milled some holes through, and then I welded it to the actual body. I was going to use the the mounting holes, the through holes here, but this is only like, I don't know. It might be 18 gauge sheet metal, and I wasn't confident that just these two mounting surfaces was going to provide enough stabilization to this, hanging essentially a 45-pound wheel off the back of it. So I did weld these. I left the welds in a spot where if I really need to remove it, I can just bust it through with the angle grinder and be done with it. So that's it. So I'm going to throw the spare on real quick. One last little walk around and we'll be done. All right, so there she sits. That is a 31-inch spare on a 16-inch wheel that is fully supported as perpendicular as I can get it to the back of the truck. And I mean, most importantly, whole thing swings completely out of the way to give us full access to the bed. And this is, I mean, you can see I'm moving the whole truck by the end of this, and that's a pretty substantial load on there. Really simple, you know, short and sweet. I don't know that I'd take it into the dunes and throw it off any jumps, but it serves its point, right? So here you can see that it's making contact with that upper bar. I need to tighten this up a little bit on the lower, but the spare is on there pretty well, even with the weight. Everything had the latch lines up. There are 2 locating tabs here as part of the benefit of using the factory hardware there. So pretty satisfied with how it came out. You know, well, I'm actually really satisfied with how it came out. It looks ridiculous. And that's the whole point of this truck, is to just look ridiculous. So I might try and incorporate some sort of, I don't know, something here, or get some sort of cargo net to make sure that stuff just doesn't pour out of the back of the bed, right? Because eliminating that whole tailgate assembly has left it a little bit holy. But yeah, sweet. As always, thanks for tuning in, guys. Most of the parts have shown up for this. I'm just waiting for the rear leaf spring mounts, the new mounts themselves. They should be here tomorrow, actually, and then we can get onto lifting this pig, sorting out the running issue, and then getting it on the road and getting back to the Datsun.